You ever been put in a position where you felt bad because somebody was in need and you didn't help them? Well, today on Daily Renewal, we're going to be talking about that. Hello, everybody. This is Pastor Lyle, and welcome to Daily Renewal. Well, we're going to continue talking today about how we are to treat people. Yesterday, we talked about how to treat the older people in our congregation, in church, but not only that, also just in general, how to treat older people and also how to treat those that are our age or younger. But today, we're going to tackle a subject that could be controversial to some. A lot of people think that the church should just automatically help everybody in need. And it is true that the church, we're not supposed to forget the poor. But unfortunately, a lot of times, especially in our culture today, there's a lot of people, in conversations I hear a lot of people talking about people being entitled, feeling like they're owed something when really they probably aren't, and most likely aren't in a lot of cases. And so how do you decipher which ones are really deserving of your help and which ones aren't? A long time ago, before I was a pastor, I actually worked at a street mission. And I used to have no problem giving money to street people. But after working at a street mission for a while, I come to learn that that giving somebody money who's on the street isn't always the best thing for them. In fact, what happens is oftentimes if you give money to somebody that you perceive as being poor on the street, you're actually enabling them often to continue in some of the lifestyles that are the very lifestyles that are keeping them in bondage in the first place. Often what I would do, and this is just a suggestion, ask somebody on the street, what do they need money for? And if they say it's for food, then if there's a food place nearby and you feel like giving, then offer them some food. And you know what I've actually found? And again, I'm not coming down on street people. I still got friends that are my friends that live on the streets. If they say they want food and you offer them food and then they say no, then you know that was not what they wanted the money for. That's one way to curtail some of those things. But I guess the point I'm making is we want to decipher what people really are. We don't want to feel bad when we don't just give and give and give. And the early church was dealing with stuff like this. They were bringing in money, sure, but there was lots of people that were dealing with things where they didn't have money. And we saw even in the book of Acts 4 in particular, where a guy named Barnabas actually sold land and brought it to the apostles' feet. All that money was just to help people within the church and to help the gospel be preached. So we pick it up from where we left off yesterday in 1 Timothy, and this is chapter 5. And this is interesting the way it starts out. It says this in chapter 5, verse 3. It says, honor widows who are really widows. And what that means is that there's times where they actually had widows who didn't qualify for being widows. In other words, there was a qualification for being a widow. And if we skip to verse 9, it says this. It says, do not let a widow under 60 years old be taken into the number. They obviously had a list of people that were looking to qualify to be a widow to receive benefits from the church. It says, so do not let a widow under 60 years old be taken into the number, and not unless she has been the wife of one man. That's the first thing. So we see the idea of 60 years old. Remember, the lifespans were shorter back then. So 60 years old, I liken it to this. I remember when I was young and I thought, I'm 49 now, and I remember somebody who was 49 I thought was really old. And that was only a little while ago. Well, now as 49, I don't feel like I'm 49. I still feel pretty young. And but it was even worse back in these days. A 60 was probably like a 90, an 80 or 90 back then. I never lived then. That's my opinion, but that's from what I understand it to be. So anyway, so the idea of being 60, they were quite on in age. They probably weren't going to remarry, and we'll see that was one of the qualifications. It says, and wife of one man. Well, what this is talking about here, we have to understand that a lot of times, this is not talking about you're disqualified if your husband died and you remarried and he died and remarried and you had 3 husbands. that didn't disqualify you. This is mainly talking about that you're known for being a woman that was loyal to your husband when he was here. So that's a qualification. It says also a qualification, and I'll read them. You're well reported for good works. If she has brought up children, if she has lodged strangers, if she's washed the saints' feet, if she's relieved the afflicted, if she has diligently followed every good work. So the requirements we're seeing here for somebody to be a real widow was, age, yeah. How faithful were you to your husband? Yeah. Also, how did you serve? What kind of a servant are you? And it even mentions to the saints here. That doesn't mean that they're just servants to the apostles. No, they were servants to other believers, their brethren. What kind of servanthood do you have? Are you somebody that legitimately has done your best to help people? And that's not necessarily just within the church, as we see here. So we see those are the requirements. Now that brings me back over, we're going to come to, from we started in verse 3. Well, let's go back over to verse 4, backtrack a little bit. It says, "But if any widow has children or grandchildren, let them first learn how to show piety at home and to repay their parents. For this is good and acceptable before God." So the other requirement is, do you have people in your immediate family that can take care of you? Again, often when I look at the generation that I deal with, or generations, we have to be very careful that we don't just assume that the church is going to take care of absolutely everything and get mad when they don't. We have to ask, first of all, is there people in our family? Do we have friends? Do we have other people? We don't want to see, and we look at Paul's example even, did a whole week on Philippians, and you can check those videos out online as well, where we know that Paul received benefits. They sent offerings to him to help him in a time of need. But we also see that there was times, like Paul was fully in favor of making sure that those who were pastoring the church, those who were doing full-time ministry, that the church helped them financially to be able to do so. But we also see that there was times where the church couldn't do it, and Paul did not want to be a burden to the church, especially financially. And so here's the example here, that flows down to the congregation members, that we don't ever want to, on purpose, be a burden to the church. If we've got other people that can help us, we should go to them first. We should go to family members. And so one of the qualifications for being a true widow was that you actually had nowhere else to turn, and the church would be glad to help you. And hopefully that applies to the church you're going to, and hopefully and I know it applies to the church that I'm pastoring. So then the next thing we see is another qualification that, if we're not careful, can be hidden, and this is number 5. In verse 5, it says, "Now she who is really a widow and left alone trusts in God and continues in supplications and prayers night and day." Well, what's this saying? What this is saying is a woman that is committing to being a widow. She says, I'm above years, I'm in the church, I realize I'm receiving something. She understands that there is a role now that she plays. It's not just a free gift. She's saying, I am committing as a widow in this church. I'm committing myself to supplications and prayers night and day. She's committing herself to be a woman of God, an elder statesman, a woman of God in the congregation that some of the younger women could come to and talk to, and not be a gossip fest, which is covered, and we're not going to cover that today, but a lot of times we see that the qualifications for young women, is to get remarried, because if not, they end up doing things they probably shouldn't do. Well, an older woman who's mature in the faith, she's now saying, I'm committing to, as a true widow in the church, I'm committing to make my ministry, to praying for people in this church, to standing before God and praying for them and helping them if they need counsel, if they need just advice. I am committing myself to this family to minister to them the best that I can as a woman of God. Wow, what a return. We have to remember, in a family, Hey, there's times where people legitimately, they've got nothing to give. And you know what? We need to give. But ultimately, by just telling somebody or giving somebody for nothing, there's oftentimes where we're really not helping them. This right here is an opportunity for a woman, and picture this, a woman who's later on in years doesn't have a husband. A lot of times they can feel like, what use am I? Well, in the New Testament church, they were a huge use. They were a huge part of the prayer team. They were a huge part of what happened in the early church because they were committed to standing before God. Do you know there's not many people that spend much time praying every day for people within the church? We've had people in our church over the years, that have set their lives just to pray for the people in the church. And I've had some say, Pastor, I am praying for you every day. Well, you know what? I don't take that lightly. I'm glad I've got people in my church that say, you know what? You need prayer. And they don't say it like, Pastor, we're praying for you every day because, man, are you ever a washout? And if anybody needs prayer, it's you. It's not that kind of an attitude. I'm thankful. But people, when they say they're going to pray for you every day, and they do, and that's what these women were doing. They were setting themselves aside and understanding that the role they played was huge in the local church. It wasn't some meaningless push off to the side, oh, you're old, oh, thanks for praying every day. No, they played a major role. And so the church, by doing things the way they did, actually brought honor to widows within the church. And it made other women in the church, it brought some protocol to other young women in the church that would look at them and go, you know what? I understand that one day I may not have a husband, and I want to be just like that woman. What an example. Well, I hope you got something out of that today. If you're above 60, there's hope for you. Be encouraged. So having said that, I hope you got something out of the videos, and you feel free. Share these videos with as many people as you can. If you think they're going to help somebody, that's why we're doing them. It also helps if you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Again, the more views we get, it helps us reach more people. And we're not asking for your money, so this is free. All you got to do is hit subscribe. It's not hard. Also, you can like us on Facebook. We're also on Twitter and Instagram. Now, if you are in the Kamloops area, feel free, drop by River City Church. We'd love to have you. Having said that, God bless you, and have a great day.